This video is going to work through the interest problems from the handout. Before we get started, I want to review the interest equation formula, which says that interest equals principal times rate times time. So we're going to set up these bucket problems, and in each bucket we are going to put the amount in the bottom, that's called the principal. We're also going to put the rate, and then we're going to put the time. Now most of the time we will use 1 for time because we will be dealing with annual interest. It will be an annual interest rate, and so we will put 1 for the year. Occasionally we will have a monthly interest rate or every 6 months, and you'll see that as we go along. In the third bucket we will put usually the total interest. If you're given the total interest, that's what goes there. Occasionally you will be given an interest rate and another amount of time or principal, and you'll have to put time, rate, and principal in the third bucket. But oftentimes you're given the total interest for that bucket. Okay, let's look at the first one. Let's look at this first problem. A merchant has 2 loans totaling $25,000. The interest rates are 7% and 8.5%. If the annual interest rate charge on the 7% loan is $520 more than the 8.5% loan, how much has he borrowed at each rate? Okay, remember that these buckets stand for interest. So over here it says if the annual interest charge on the 7% loan is or equals $520 more than the 8.5% loan, we're supposed to find how much is borrowed at each rate. So we need to figure out the amount of interest on the 7% loan, and it says that that's $520 more than the interest on the 8.5% loan. So let's put the principal in these buckets and see what happens. I need to let one of them be X. And the only other thing I know is that they add to 25,000. So if they add to 25,000, one of them must be X and the other one must be 25,000 minus X. Now for this third bucket, I'm given a total amount of 520. So that doesn't represent an account. It just represents a dollar amount. So when I look at my equation, I'm going to do the bucket thing. I'm going to multiply the buckets and follow the operators that I have written above there. So I need 7% of x, 0.07 times x, equals 8.5%, which is 0.085 times 25,000 minus x, and then plus 520. Alright, now when I look at that, I'm going to clear the parentheses, but then I'm going to multiply through and clear my decimals. Okay, let's take a look at this. I cleared my parentheses and I combined my like terms, and now I've got decimal numbers. You can do it with decimal numbers, or since this has 3 places and this has 2, if I move the decimal point over 3 places, which means I'm multiplying by 1,000, I can clear all the decimals. So for this one I'm going to have to put a 0 in there. This one, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to have to put 3 zeros in there. And this one, 1, 2, 3. Here's what my new equation looks like. Alright, this problem has some rather large numbers, but that's what you have calculators for. When you solve this equation, it doesn't come out even, and follow the instructions in your assignment for those problems as far as where you're supposed to round it to. I rounded it to the nearest tenth. So I ended up with x being $17,064.50. So 25,000 minus x is $7,935.50. So now I can write my conclusion. He borrowed $17,064.50 at 7% and $7,935.50 at 8.5%. Alright, the second problem is a little more straightforward. It says an investor has $8,000 invested at 6%. How much more should he invest at 9% to have an annual return of 8% on both investments? So I've got two accounts. One is 6%, one is 9%, and I want my annual return to be 8%. Now, because it says annual, my time here is 1 because of the word annual. It's 1 year. I oftentimes don't even write the percents there if it's annual, but we'll go ahead and write them there just to keep that in mind. Now, it says I've got 8,000 invested at 6%. I don't know how much I need to invest at 9%, but if I look at 800 plus X, 8,000 plus X, that's what I have all together, my $8,000 plus whatever I invest in the 9% account. Okay, there's my equation, and I just need to do my bucket problem. I have 0.06 times 8,000 plus 0.09 times X equals 0.08 times 8,000 plus X, and I will solve it. When I multiply through by 100, I move the decimal point over 2 places, and I solve the equation. I get X equals 16,000. Well, what did X represent? X represented the amount that I need to invest at 9%. So now I can write my conclusion. Therefore, he should invest $16,000 at 9%. Alright, our last problem says that Grace borrows $30,000 from one bank and $48,000 from another, whose interest rate is 2% more than the first bank. If her total monthly interest charge on the loans is $600, what interest rate does she pay on each loan? Okay, now this has a couple things that we need to be careful of. First of all, I have two accounts, and I can go ahead and the first one is $30,000 and the second one is $48,000. Now the interest rate for both of them are unknown. If I let this one be X, this is 2% more, so this would be X plus 2%. And I am told that the total monthly interest charge, now this is really important, it's the monthly interest charge. The monthly interest charge is $600. Now that changes one thing in our problem, and that is I've got my principal and my rate. My time is 1 month. That's 1/12 of a year. I have got to put 1/12 at the top of my bucket for the time. Alright, let's look at our equation then. I have got 1/12 times 30,000 times X plus 1/12 times 48,000 times the quantity X plus 2%. Now, in an equation, we do not put percents in, we put the decimal representation. So I need to say plus 0.02, and that equals $600. Okay, let's clear our fractions and see what we have. Okay, I multiplied the 1/12 times 30,000 and the 1/12 times 48,000, and I get 2,500x plus 4,000 times that quantity equals 400. Then if I go ahead and do my distributive like I'm supposed to, I need to go through 4,000 times x, 4,000 times 0.02. I get that next line. Okay, now I don't have any more decimals or fractions. I can just go ahead and solve that. Alright, now look at the answer that I got. I got x equals 0.08. Now remember that x was the interest rate here, and then it also was involved in the interest rate here. But be real careful, because my interest rate is not 0.08%. Whenever you do an equation and you have a value in there that represents a percent, it is as a decimal. So when I get the answer x equals 8%, that really means that x equals, instead of 0.08, change it back to a percent. So x is 8%, which means my x plus 2% gives me 10% for that other account. So those are my two answers. So now I'm ready to write my conclusion. Therefore, the interest rates are 8% and 10%. In summary, for interest problems, you're going to draw your buckets, and remember that each bucket represents the interest. The formula for interest is principal times rate times time. So in each bucket you need to put the principal, the interest rate as a decimal, and the time in years. Multiply your buckets just as they appear in your equation. A couple notes at the bottom there. Note that the time of the loan isn't always 1 year. Make adjustments as you need. And also, sometimes the total interest is given, in which case put that amount in the bucket and don't put principal, interest rate, and time. Just put the total interest amount. All right, good luck.